Oh, hello?
Hello, hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, what's up?
Hello, it's me.
I do
I'm
indeed
finally
now.
managed to, come and say hi to Cutie Pies, DGG, hello, and you, Steven, of course. Yeah, well, I tried to jump in a couple, I think yesterday or day before yesterday. After I talked with Wonderbox, I was like, gonna go chat with my favorite streamer, right?
Uh-huh.
And I open your like big screen thing, right, to see
Yeah.
what you're doing. And I see like a bunch of people yelling at each other about puberty blockers. And I was like, fuck no. Got scared, and walked away.
Um, Wait, this was yesterday? Or no, this was 2 days ago. Oh,
The,
no, I remember
yeah,
the
yeah,
combo.
yeah, yeah,
I know
yeah.
what you're talking
I
about.
was like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
listened to it a couple of minutes and I was like, I am like not equipped. I'm not advanced. I am not, it's not my jam. I'm gonna go drink and watch Peaky Blinders,
Okay.
which
Don't worry,
is,
nobody
yeah,
else in
what I
these
did.
conversations usually is either, so you're good. But,
Oh, burn, burn.
but
Also,
anyway,
you know what?
yeah,
A,
what's up?
a fan of yours actually said I should get acquainted. Acquainted is the word, I think,
Yep.
with Nebraska Steve. So he showed me, um, he sent me a conversation of yours from long time ago. It is
Yeah,
6 hours, so I super apologize. I was not able to watch it because it's way too long.
that's good.
But there was like a bunch of yelling there, and then he showed forwarded me a short version when I said I can't watch 6 hour one, and there was like you from a very long time ago apparently speaking with a dude called something bullshit, like no bullshit, no,
Yeah, that's
something like
the
that.
no bullshit. Yeah, he was a character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like a video of you talking with that person, and damn, Nebraska Steve was something.
Yeah, it was a different time in my
Nebraska
life,
Steve
okay?
was bold. He was bold.
Bald or
Your
bold?
alter bold, like,
I
yeah,
that that
brave.
that didn't have bold, brave. Oh, okay, yeah. He was
Oh no, he had hair.
Thank you.
He had
Okay.
hair for sure.
Yeah.
Not as great as yours now, by the way.
Thank you
But
so much. Yeah.
yeah. Don't worry, don't worry. But it was just something, truly
Yeah, it was a
impressive.
it was a different time on the internet.
Well, I kind of liked it, to be honest, but that's like another story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we wanted to say super thank you to everyone uh, who donated to the quad bike point 2.0. We actually got it. Gonna go take pics of it tomorrow. And yeah, so unfortunately, guys, I have good news. The good news is we finally have the quad bike you helped to buy. But bad news is that the people we were supposed to buy it for kind of died. So we're going to give it to this battalion still, but this would be another group of people, not the one we initially was supposed to give it to because they unfortunately died.
Oh.
The
Well.
soldiers in that brigade. So yeah, this is the bad news, and the good news is that it's still getting to the hands of Ukrainian armed forces, but just another battalion, probably. Or yeah, anyhow happens.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's it. Also, the lads helped me to buy a thermal scope a couple days ago. So
Mhm.
again, help you. Thank you. Yeah. So basically, what I wanted to talk about was like million years ago. So I forgot already almost entirely what happened to that conversation. But you talked with Ayla about like why people turn to religion, modern day, like like Islam, stuff like that, Christianity, things like that. So why do people seem to just don't do that well with like freedom, choice, things like that?
Mhm.
So I don't know if you remember that conversation like exactly.
Yeah, I do.
I
Basically,
don't,
like
to
for
be quite
people that
honest.
don't have like religion, like what are the substitutes in their life that makes it work for them?
Yeah, and why you also talked about like why the hell are they so like allergic to freedom, basically why people just tend to be unhappy, or like conservative people, Christian people sometimes tend to be like happier than
Mhm.
liberal peeps, things like that.
Mhm.
So I heard you say like something, not exactly, but correct me if I'm wrong, like something like that you think that maybe like freedom is basically like not for everyone, and that maybe people would be happy if they had actually had like religious things and things like that. And you said like you're not like sure, should we like push those like atheists, like super duper progressive liberal type of things if they make people unhappy? So is it like kind of worth it? You said something like that, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Basically, just that like people, I think people need like overarching themes and narratives to kind of like guide their life, and that's probably more important than just having like the freedom to infinitely choose whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah, but do you think it has to be like this doomer that like we have to return to like religion shit, or can it be like maybe some kind of other purpose? So something like meaningful, but not exactly like religion.
Yeah, it can be some other kind of purpose, but it's really hard to like. It feels like people really need a group, and there have to be people not in the group. It feels like an important thing because if I think of like, well, it doesn't have to be. It
Mm.
doesn't have to be that. It could be. Then what is it like? Ultra nationalist, like my country versus the world. Fuck everybody else. Does it have to be like race related? Like I like white people. Fuck everybody else. Does it have to be like? It feels like there has to be some like in group out group thing, and religion seems like
Tribal stuff, yeah.
yeah. Which sorry, I hope it doesn't have to be that way. I don't know a good answer.
But I think it doesn't have to be like ultra nationalist. It just can be just being just nationalist, you know, like civic nationalist, and you love your country, you like care about it a lot. You have this feel of like unity with your people, with you know, and you're like very much oriented towards helping other people, your community, your country, things like that. I think they work. I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And I just don't know, like it seems like in like United States it's pretty hard to do that because people are divided as shit and they just kind of like hate everything. It seems like sometimes, because sometimes, you know, I kind of like wonder who the fuck loves this country. I mean, I thought it was conservatives when I was like a child. I remember like, you know, those Republican people in the United States, and they would be like flags everywhere, like America fuck yeah moment, like, you know, eagle and shit like that, right? And they would be like very proud of like America. But now it seems like leftists hate it, but apparently like right is hated too. They think it's like
Yeah.
degeneracy is,
So
you know,
here's like
everywhere. And
here's an issue that I think exists. Do you know what populism is?
yep.
So here's an issue. I think populism is probably really good when you have a super corrupt and fucked government. I think in that case, populism is probably necessary for some sort of government cleansing. But when you have a government that's still largely responsive to the wills of the people, but like the people disagree, and then you get populist, then I think everything goes to shit. And I think that's kind of where we're at in the United States. People are out here as populists acting like we're living under like some authoritative totalitarian regime. Like we're living under like the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany. And so like we need populists to like fix it. But we really don't. The government is still largely responsive to the will of the people. It's just that people have fundamentally huge disagreements in the United States over very fundamental things. Like should women have a right to an abortion? We have huge disagreements over that. Stuff related
That's
to
a weird one.
LGBT issues. We have huge disagreements over that. So I think when populism starts to crop up as a response to like political disagreement instead of actual government like malevolence or malfeasance, I think you run into huge problems because then you start to label everybody as enemies and you start to misinterpret like the government is doing things I don't want. Well, it can't be because we disagree. It must be because the government is evil. And it's like, well, that's probably not what's going on. So that's, yeah, I don't know. I think that's one of the big issues we have in the United States right now.
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah, I just kind of thought about like fixing it like without the, you know, religious Islam shit, you know. I
Yeah.
just thought about how would you do that, because it seems kind of wrong. You talk with the Ella, I think about it, and I think she said something like it's even if it makes people unhappy, it's still kind of like okay to push for that. But I think it's kind of weird to do that. Like if it makes like people depressed and shit, then why would we, you know? But on the other hand, like regressing doesn't seem like obviously like a good choice. But you seem to be like a person who is like chill with like without living without like some kind of like grand narrative or like religious story and something like that. Was it always like that for you, or you like just, you know?
I think
Kinda like
I got lucky and I stumbled upon it during my whole there. I think I think some people take a journey when they go from religious to atheist. You take a journey where initially when you lose religion, you become incredibly nihilistic, and then nothing matters and everything is kind of like ridiculous and horrible. And then hopefully somehow you grow from that nihilistic position to kind of like a more existential position where it's like, okay, I understand that like the world is pointless and everything and that's horrible, but you know, there can be meaning in this life. I just kind of have to create it for myself and then pursue that. But it seems like that's a really hard jump for a lot of people to make. So they either get trapped in some nihilistic pit after religion, or they are like stuck in the religious phase or something forever. That's what it seems like. But I don't know how to move people into an area where it's like, hey, listen, there might not be like an objective, overarching goal for life and everything, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be that way. But it seems very, very hard to get people to buy into that. Like they need that broader story or something. Yeah.
yeah, you were Catholic, I think, right?
Yeah, Catholic.
I think
yeah.
you said. So you kind of like when you started to be like an atheist, or like at least thinking that God is not that big a deal, when you were young or later, and how did it happen?
It was probably It was like a gradual journey. Probably when I turned like 15, 16, it started to happen
Mm.
more. I don't know why. I guess like this is a little arrogant of me to say, but I feel like anytime you start to ask enough questions, and if you've got like a sufficiently complex and inquisitive mind, it feels very, very, very hard to imagine that you could hold on to religion past that, because there are too many claims that they make about the world and metaphysics and everything, where it's like this doesn't make sense. It doesn't stack up. Like, this is really silly. And then eventually, I think it kind of starts to fade away from that. From my perspective, by the way. Sorry, that might sound offensive to some people, but
No, it's fine. It's just interesting to me how people like kind of come to it, because I was kind of like born atheist. Sounds like kind of weird, but I never was religious like ever, like a day in my life. So it's a little bit different for me than it is for people who like like abandoned their religion or became atheists, when they made kind of like a choice in that regard, which is I did not, which I don't mind, obviously. I'm pretty happy with being an atheist, but just it's a little bit different, I think, and apparently it's kind of rare as well. So it's kind of rare to be like atheist from the get-go.
sure, yeah.
So yeah, that's something like well, I was just interested in. But to speak about, like, you talked with her like about like choices and how it creates like this anxiety and things like that. And it was very interesting to listen to it, because I was actually not to sound like as you said, like arrogant or something, but never really suffered that much from anxiety of having to choose even important things in life. So I like dropped out from the university. It was a pretty serious decision, right? And I did that, and I started like to be full on revolutionary at the time.
Sure.
And I was 19, and I never felt like anxious about it. And I also never eat myself up about it. Like, was it a wrong decision? Was it a bad choice? Things like that. So so even when I started like working at the shop, and I didn't have like much of a, people would say like career or something like that, right? And I was like, I didn't eat myself up about that. I didn't like thought like, oh no, I did a wrong thing. It's just not the way my brain worked. I never felt this type of anxiety, I guess you could say. So I was like, it is what it is. I learned from my experiences, obviously, right? I would not do them things that hurt me, obviously, right? I would try to. But I just never felt that. And a bunch of my friends really, really did. So they really suffered from what their life would going to look like. If they make a wrong choice in the university, then their career would suck, or they will like hate their job. And they just couldn't stop like, thinking about all of that.
Yeah.
And when I, talked with them a bunch with my friends, right, I realized that most people, I think you talked again with Ayla about it. She said like this is like people just generally are anxious because they have choices and so many things to choose from. But I think it's not the choice itself that scares people, but the anxiety of making the wrong choice. So this is the most, I think, what I saw in my friends' lives. So that's why people kind of feel better when they have less options, less choices. Sometimes they gravitate towards like authoritarian shit because of that, or religious shit because of that, because it just gives them all the answers, and you have to like make any choices, and nothing really is your responsibility. It just is, you just live like your life as it is, without making those like mistakes that people are very terrified of making.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
to
I
make
agree.
it like
Yeah, and even if you do make mistakes,
some
there's like a path towards. That's why I said that like like religion gives you metaphysical. It gives you metaphysical, it gives you epistemic, and it gives you ethical answers to everything. Yeah, it shows you how to view the world, it shows you how to find truth, and it shows you how to be a good person. All of those answers are granted by religion, and you don't have to waste any time thinking about them, which is so convenient and so nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of like eliminates what most people just can't deal with, which is uncertainty. So yeah, so you have being certain is super nice,
Yeah, for sure.
but yeah, it feels like very calming, relaxing, and stuff like that. You feel like at ease, because uncertainty and chaos is very hard for most people to deal with. Just on a, like a very like some stupid example, like for example a trip, like with my friends to Europe, for example, right? Things would go sideways. We missed the train. We would nearly missed our plane. It was like a clusterfuck. Basically, we got in some trouble on the road. We were very young at the time as well, so I didn't feel anything bad about that. It's just how I am. So I was like, well, okay, we can deal with it, whatever, right? So we dealt with it actually. I was pretty calm and managed to get us a dude who helped us out and made us we made it to the place in time, and it was all good. But it was a fucking nightmare for my friends.
Yeah.
They felt like anxious and bad about this whole situation, and I just realized just how different those situations felt for me and for them. So yeah, so things like that seems to be like people really don't like this uncertainty and things like that. And also I feel like the less we have like to decide, the less we are to blame if things go wrong.
Yeah, of course,
This
yeah.
I think is
There's
why most people don't really want to be bosses like or managers or have like a bunch of responsibility, because it's just hard to be responsible if shit goes south,
for sure.
basically.
Did you ever watch The Dark Knight, the fucking edgy Batman movie with the Joker?
Yes, I like the edgy movie, the
Yeah,
edgy movie with the Joker.
very edgy, but there's that quote that he has that's very true when he's talking to, I think it's when Harvey Dent is in the hospital, and he
Yeah,
says,
yep, I know the scene. Yeah.
yeah, and he's like, as long as there's a plan, people feel okay, even if the plan is horrible. And then he gives the example of like soldiers dying somewhere, but like if a random person dies, I think that what you said, that kind of like it synergizes well with that, where like even if there's some parts of the religious aspect that are bad, or even if there are some organized parts of it that seem really horrible, like at least there's a structure and there's a plan and there's a reason why it's all happening, and it makes it easy to go through everything, even if like the stated thing is like kind of shitty or kind of bad. At least there's like a reason for it, or there's a structure to understand it, and yeah.
Yeah, also people like it's very hard to deal with blame, I think. This
Uh-huh.
is something or self-blame. This is something I know now better in Ukraine because of the, horrible stuff that is going on.
Yeah.
So people kind of like avoid being blamed like a plague. So the choices we now make are very hard and very like life or death, I guess you could say, defining.
Yeah.
So, for example, things like, should I leave the city? Should I go? Should I like stay? I want to stay, but if my parents or my siblings won't leave the country because of me, then if they die, it's my fault. Things like that. So it's just very like hardcore situations, not just regular life type of situation. But it is regular life, I guess, in Ukraine now. But you know what I mean, right? So basically, I realized when I was talking with people that they would become either more like religious or fatalist during this whole thing, which makes sense. When you deal with death and like destruction, people tend to get more like into this whole believing things that determine the destiny, things like that. And I actually had like very interesting experience when my father was killed. People would family friends, they would say like, oh, it's like, it was just, his fate. It just had to happen. Nothing anyone could have done. It was just, it is what it is. So my volunteer friend Igor, he's a pretty religious person, and he would say like, it's, God's thing. If a person is not religious, they would say like, oh, it's just like the fate, just
Yeah.
basically is, how it should have been. And I remember just it was like first week after he was killed, and it just got me so angry. I was so mad at these people, and I realized they were trying. I would straight up scream at them. Then they would say things like that, and I then realized that I was just emotional and stuff. But then I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, they are not trying to upset me, right? It's like stupid to assume that they're trying to upset me. So they say those things to comfort me, to like to provide some kind of like comfort. And why do they think it's comforting is the question, right?
Yeah.
So I thought about it, and then I talked a little bit with Igor about it, and he basically, in the process of that conversation, I kind of realized that it makes them things easier for them. So they think if you like blasted by artillery, for example, to bits in your own house, then it's just nothing you could have done. It's just fate. It's just like some sort of like, and it is very interesting because in a way, of course it is. You don't control fucking Russian artillery, right? So it's like something that doesn't really. But at the same time, I just felt like I pointed it out that he went out on the balcony when explosions were going off, and it's he did that. That was his decision, dumb one, by the way. I argued with him about it a couple times before, and of course, 95% of a fault for that blame, right, lies on Russia, obviously, and Russian artillery, Russian government, Russian people, whatever the fuck you wanna, call it, people who actually executed that, shot that shell. But 5% was him going on the fucking balcony, and it's okay to state that. It doesn't mean like I blame him for dying, obviously, right? But just it was stupid.
Some
She didn't have to do it. So
Yeah.
people get such huge eyes when I say that I blame him. But it's not really about blame. It's about responsibility. It's about being responsible, and he wasn't. Not only he endangered himself, but also my mother, who was also on the balcony trying to get him to go inside the house. And if she didn't walk away like seconds, like 20 seconds, she would be dead as well. So yeah, this is just and I told that to people, and they were like, "What the?" They thought it was. They were very confused, But I just thought that them saying that there was no choice, nothing he could have done, he would have died anyway, and I was like, "Well, no." And the most interesting part of it was when Igor was talking to my mother, and he was like, "Well, Irina is your name. It's anything that nothing you could have done. He would have died anyway. It was just his time." And I was like, "No, it wasn't. It really wasn't." And not only that, but also she is the living proof that he is wrong. Literally living, no pun intended, because she went in the house like she was supposed to, behind the walls, and she was not killed.
Yeah.
Of course she could have died still, it could have landed where she was, but still, like, you have way more chances to remain alive if you go behind two walls or something like that in the middle of the house. You can still die, obviously, right? But it ups your chances to survive, and she sits there like the living proof of taking and being responsible and doing at least the best you can in this situation, and he still somehow interprets as that it was just fate and things like that. Yeah, so it's very interesting.
Yeah, something that's really hard when it comes to those types of questions. You were getting, I think, a little bit triggered because you were watching some of the conversations I was having about like the rape discourse, right?
Me?
Yeah, because I remember that I feel like you were typing things to me about, or I saw you tweeting about stuff relating to like women being careful or like during sexual interaction.
Yeah. Sorry, I remembered. Yeah. You talked with Brittany, I think, about that, and
Yeah, a
I
little bit,
heard it, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Yeah. That
One of it's that conversation is actually, it's directly related to this one. People have a really hard time assuming a level of responsibility without also feeling like there is some level of blame. So when you talk, when you talk to somebody about like, is there something that you could have done to avoid a situation? When they think about that, they might hear it like logically, but emotionally, what they're thinking about is like, well, if there's something I could have done and I didn't do it, then it's my fault that it happened. And I think people have a really hard time sorting through those things in their head. So like when it comes to your father, or when it comes to, like potential victims of anything, it's really hard to say like, well, maybe they could have made a different choice, because what people hear is, oh, wow, it must have been all their fault then. And that's not true. Like there are times where you could have had 100% responsibility to avoid something, but 0% moral responsibility in terms of it happening to you. Right?
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very, 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 very hard for people to sort through that mentally. They kind of like wrap it all up together.
Oh, I see. So you're like, what you tag in this to is like this whole thing about if you like get raped, if you say like, oh, if you tell women like, don't like take dudes to your house like random, you don't know, or like don't go like drink with like a bunch of like guys who you don't know like in the bar, something like that, then it's basically you blaming them for being raped.
I think that's how people interpret it a lot. Yeah.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, what you meant. So it's like with my father, basically. So when I say this, people like think it, they get like all awkward about it because it feels like I'm blaming him for that, for getting killed.
Yeah,
but I of course don't. But and I know who's at fault pretty clearly, But but still, it doesn't mean like you couldn't do anything like, or you shouldn't do, or you should like endanger yourself without any at least understand that you're doing it. Then when I go, for example, to the front line, some may say like, oh, you're endangering yourself, right? And I do, I'm upping my chances of dying for sure, like, yeah, right? But I understand it. So I know it. It's not like a fate, not fate. Also, when I talk to Digger about it, which he goes to the front lines way more than I do, obviously. So it kind of is his cope, He thinks if it's like his destiny to die, then he will. Yeah. So if it's not, then he won't. So for him, it's like kind of like it makes it easier for him to deal with the fact that he is risking his life every time he goes, So I wouldn't like, try to take that away from him, obviously. Why, right?
Yeah.
But but it's just, to me, it seems like this type of thing. This phrase that fuck, I forgot how to say it in English. Verblut, verblut. Let me type it. Sorry, I forgot the word.
Sure.
Verblut, verblut. Camel. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
So yes, so basically the phrase is like trust in Allah, but tie your camel in the desert, something like that.
Yeah.
So this is like the Muslim phrase about responsibility that I really, really kind of like, because it the like Allah or like universe or like chance, luck in this situation, something you don't control, right? So you can trust in it that you will not be blasted by Russian artillery because whatever, it's not your time to go. Like the God protects you, whatever the fuck, right? Or you're lucky, you think you will not be, but still do the take the precautions to up your safety, which in this regard would be tie the fucking camel, right? So it doesn't like run away while you're sleeping, right, in the
Yeah.
desert. So in this case, my father not going on that fucking balcony would be that thing. He would have tied his camel, and maybe not 100%, but maybe would be alive right now, you know. So this is it. But the of course there are a bunch of things he didn't control, which is Russian artillery or like natural disasters. You can't really like control them, right? But you can still do certain things, and I feel like people have like pretty like big trouble with that idea, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, well, things like again, responsibility, like in general, seems to be very like unpleasant to most people. I told you about it, and I think on this messaged you on Discord, like when you were talking that had conversation after that conversation with Ella. It was about like Erich Fromm. He's a very cool author who wrote a bunch of books about like psychology of like masses, of like after he basically was a Jewish German psychologist and psychoanalyst and philosopher who escaped Germany during World War II, and he is well known like for writing the books about like people, why they go into authoritarian things, why they decide to succumb basically to such things. And that book was Escaping Freedom in English, I think. And yeah, and that was very interesting book that it's exactly like explains like the psychology behind those like people abandoning responsibility, being afraid of choice, and finding ways to basically cope and like escape freedom. And I think people do it in like a bunch of ways.
Yeah, for sure.
And he exemplified those things. Like I think like one of the main ones. He also I think brought that example about children that are free, like not really free, because children have like zero responsibility and freedom, right? Because we tell them like what to eat, what to get, what dress they're gonna wear, or like clothing, when they go to sleep, can they go outside, can they not, what can they do. So basically they have like if an adult person lived like that, they would like blow their brains out because this is like zero responsibility for your own life. And yet if the children are like not abused or like impoverished, they seem to be like the happiest, most relaxed, cheerful creatures on earth, right? So yeah, he basically made that point that freedom doesn't necessarily make people happy. In fact, it can make them pretty unhappy, which is what we talked about before.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I think that freedom is just, I think, a proxy for like things that make us feel good. So as long as we feel like we're in like a happy, healthy scenario where we're being taken care of and all of our needs are being met, we don't have as much a desire for it. But when you're in a scenario where it feels like you don't have the ability to be happy or be healthy or whatever, then the thing we blame is, well, I wish I could make a choice otherwise to leave. So people will mistake like, I wish I just had more freedom, when they're really saying like, I wish I could just improve my situation. I think it's really hard for a lot of people to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah, he highlighted like a bunch of things that I think are still appropriate to this day. I think one was like authoritarianism is one of the ways to escape freedom that he highlighted. He said you can basically give up your individualism and become part of like a collective, so like a system, right? So it can be like Soviet shit, it can be like fascist, Nazi shit, whatever the fuck, right? And basically they tell you what to do then, so you become kind of like a passive, like like a child basically following instructions of the big daddy government, or like something like Stalin, whatever the fuck, right?
Yeah.
So yes, this seems to be like one of the ways he highlighted as escape of like choices and freedoms and stuff like that. You also become pretty much not responsible for anything of value, so you like pretty much just do what people tell you, and it feels like very freeing for some people. He also talked about destructiveness, I think in English it would be. So basically he said that some people like they start to be destructive because of this like anxiety that freedom brings them. They basically afraid of the world in a way, and they lash out. So they kind of think like destroy first, the world is against me, so I'm going to be against the world.
Sure.
And he made like a bunch of examples of people they basically engaging in like criminal behavior or like like some kind of like antisocial stuff.
Yep.
So like for example, like
You leaving?
brutality, crime,
Oh, wait. Hold on
terrorism.
one second.
Oh yeah, of course. Hey guys, long time no chat. It's all it's puberty blockers fault, I swear. I No, not only, but yeah. Also, last time I wanted to chat before the puberty blockers thing, I saw Farah, and I also thought, fuck
Okay.
no,
I'm
and
sorry.
escaped.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So what? Oh, what?
Oh, my wife and her dad are leaving, so I was just saying bye.
Oh yeah. Cool, cute. Say goodbye and stuff. What the fuck I was talking about? I forgot.
About the...
distractedness.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Destructive,
distractedness. So basically he says like terrorism can be that, vandalism can be that, things like that. So to me this kind of like ties with this whole, it's not exactly like criminal obviously, right? But this whole thing, like I think sometimes people say like matrix shit, like everything is against us, like media is against us, and this like kind of like things like that can also tie to that. And the last thing he said was automaton conformity, so robot-like conformity. So he said that it's very suitable for like Western societies because they don't really produce that much authoritarian regimes you can escape to. So the thing that works like as escapism from freedom in Western societies, he said, was like this conformity. So basically being like other people. So do not stick out in any way, like enjoy like culture, pop music, things like that everyone else enjoys. So being like part of collective in that way. So you also kind of like abandon your individualism, not hardcore like you would in an authoritarian regime, but in a way as well. Yeah. Pretty interesting book, to be honest. He like goes in like a bunch of details about that. So you kind of get absorbed by mass, like pretty much doing things that everyone else does and stuff like that. And he also talks about like some people mistake like escapism as freedom. So if you're like somewhere like on a boat having like no responsibilities, no choices whatsoever, then some people think, oh, it's so freeing, like, to just be a hippie, like, I don't know, like somewhere like living lives, don't having like a relationship, just, having like sex with people and stuff, but not having like a relationship you have to maintain, things you have to invest in. You just, drift in a boat, basically, like careless. And he said like, yeah, so people sometimes also see that as freedom, but he kind of like, didn't think it was freedom in a way, because what are you choosing exactly? So there you just don't have any responsibilities and any choices to make of value. It's not exactly like exactly what I would understand, but being free.
Yeah, it's like the scene in The Lion... Did you ever watch The Lion King?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. When he goes to hang out with Timon and Pumbaa because he wants freedom. Yeah, kind of like abdicating all of his responsibility.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, when she like comes to Nal, I think is her name. When she comes to to him, and she's like, "Hey, you're like a king, dude. Like, go do your job. Like, your tribe is getting fucked by Scar and stuff like that, and it's a very bad situation." And he's like, no, I gotta like Hakuna Matata this shit."
Yeah.
And yes, yeah, which feels freeing, but are you like actually free when you have like no responsibility, no choices? What are you free from exactly? Yeah. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, yeah. Things like that just come up, sometimes now, because people had to make like pretty, drastic choices, I guess you could say, and then lived with the consequences of those choices, which despite me being not really prone as a person to think about like things like that, like be anxious about like things I choose, but even me, I feel it. I imagine people who are generally like anxious are having like not a fun time right now in war. So yeah, I remember just thinking when I was in Kharkiv and I thought about leaving, and I was like staunch on not leaving. I was like, I will not leave. I will do my work here, help my friends who at the front, who territorial defense in the city and things like that. And I just felt at the time passed, and it was getting worse and worse in terms of shelling and things like that. And I just remember thinking like, what if, for example, like my mother or like my father or my sister or someone like dies, and what would it feel like, you know? Because it might as well be, will it be my fault because they don't want to leave because of me, for example. My sister didn't want to leave either, by the way, but you know, my parents kind of did to the western parts, which kind of funny because my father ended up returning and refused to even leave Kharkiv. So that's like another story. But yeah, I just remember thinking those thoughts like all the time, like and just thinking like, how would it feel, you know, if it happened, and I, you know, could I live with that, basically?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I ended up um, living for a while, but then returned, and you know, I'm pretty okay with the choices I made so far. And but sometimes just the brain, you know, kind of eats you without any like, you don't, I don't sleep much, you know. I have a pretty severe insomnia before the war, and now it's kind of like basically sleep is for the weak is now my motto. So sometimes I would lay, you know, in the night, I can't sleep, and I would start like thinking about shit like that. So now I guess I realize how my friends felt in a way.
Yeah,
I've
for
had
sure.
pretty severe anxiety. Yeah, I didn't before. So unpleasant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes the brain will stick stuck on some like truly stupid shit. Like for example, I would think about like, have my father like felt something or didn't, or like was it like fast enough so he didn't like understand what happened when it happened, you know? Had he heard like a whistle of the artillery, it makes like this whistle sound usually, or didn't, and you know, things like that, and it just loop in, and you'd be like, brain, just fuck off, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, but it just wouldn't. And sometimes, yeah, it's very I'm okay with dealing with that on most days, but sometimes you just think like, what the fuck, brain, just, you know, stop doing this stupid shit. It doesn't help anyone, not me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what have you been up to lately, I guess? What do you yeah.
Basically, mostly traveled a bunch with Devin, who's like a photographer from United States, and showed him stuff. Also met up with a pretty cool British dude who's also a kind of like a correspondent in showed him stuff with Devin. And then I also worked with some other journalists and volunteer shit mostly, like buying stuff, delivering stuff. Also gonna meet up with Dylan quite soon, probably on Saturday or Sunday. He actually is kind of here in Kharkivska Oblast, but he's uh, filming with sappers, demining like stuff in Kharkivska Oblast, and drinking vodka with them,
Gotcha.
which probably is not good for him. But you know, let's pray for Dylan Burns. You know,
Yeah.
uh, they are feeding him like sala, which is like Ukrainian dish, like lard from like pig, whatever the fuck. It's kind of gross, but whatever. So they feeding him this thing, and also like drinking vodka, which is horilka in Ukrainian. And you like drink, and he posted pictures of it, and I was like, dude, you got like semi-plastered with drinking a bottle of wine with me in my kitchen. So I know, yeah, pray for you, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, anyhow, I'm gonna meet up with him probably soon, and yeah, tell him to interesting places that I'm not gonna spoil so far. Yeah. Other than that, you know, I went to Izum, which is I posted some pics from it there, which is in Kharkiv Oblast, is the place where the biggest mass graves were by civilians, killed by, executed by Russians. And this was like the biggest mass grave since Yugoslavia genocide, actually. So pretty huge. And yeah, we went there, and there was like this interesting kind of like experience. It's in the forest, sort of the graves, you know. And we went there, and there was like a bunch of soldiers there. Like they were how do you say it in English? Rotation. Yeah, rotation. So they were like you know, changing battalions and things like that. So there was like a lot of them there. So we talked with a bunch of them. They asked us not to film anything at the time. Them where they were, obviously. So yeah, so we went to the commander, and we said, can we go at least like film those graves? And they were like, well, sure, yeah, but there's like all of it is almost still mines everywhere. So if you blow up, like, you know, we warned you, you know. And we're like, well, you know. So I asked like Devin, should we go? Like it's, you know, could be pretty dangerous. And he was like, oh, you guys, like I trust you guys and stuff like that. And I was like, oh fuck. You know, it's on me now to decide. So yeah, we ended up going with our guide, and basically he would go first, then me, then Devin. behind,
Yeah.
and we would go like in this like line, and not step outside of it. So I would like, Devin, don't like go left, go right, just go exactly behind us.
If you're looking
So
carefully,
yeah,
can you see a mine, or are they normally like buried, like beneath stuff?
beneath stuff mostly, yeah. So they use like those forbidden in we can't use them by UNESCO, like laws. Oh, you not UNESCO, sorry, it's another UNESCO is architecture by like gags, hog, whatever you call it. Like you just basically can't use mines like that. They are pехота, how to say it? Not cavalry, but
I have no
basically
idea,
I
but
forgot the word, I apologize, but they basically like they are against people, those mines, not like tanks, so not
oh,
anti-tank mines, but they are supposed to kill actual soldiers that step on them.
gotcha,
So
gotcha.
yeah, I forgot the word in English, it's how it's called,
Is
but
it
but
infantry? Is that the word you're
basically,
looking for?
oh
Anti-infantry?
yeah, thank you,
Yeah, okay, okay.
yeah, infantry, yeah, exactly that, thank you. So basically they kind of like use those, and it's pretty much impossible to see them. And also they leave like растяжки, which is like this, like a thread that if you cross that thread, it just explodes, like grenades and things like that. So they tie those threads in between trees, for example, in people's houses, like in the yards sometimes of people abandoned houses, and people explode on those all the time. So yeah, the story is that we went there still to film. We were very careful, and we would step only where we saw traces of cars.
Oh, because
So if a
the car
car
has gone over it. It's
passed,
probably not
yeah,
gonna.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
pretty heavy. So if it didn't explode, then probably we won't as well. Still, it was kind of like, a bit, anxious there, but still we filmed stuff, and we then left, and we actually met some ladies there, like grannies, who were like going there to bring flowers to the graves of their executed relatives and things like that. So they were like, oh, children, like, be careful, don't step on shit. And they're like, oh, thank you, grannies, badass grannies, unafraid. So yeah, then we basically went to do other stuff in the city to show like destruction and things like that. And then we found out that a couple hours after we were there, actually a civilian exploded there.
Jeez.
They went to bring flowers to the dead people and ended up dying, unfortunately, themselves. Stepped on a mine. Yeah, so civilians just kind of die because they bring like flowers or want to see their graves of their loved ones. The demining process is going on there for sure, like most of it, but still we heard like explosions and demining shit on the side. Yeah, so things like that. And people say that civilians will continue to explode for quite some time, even if the war stops.
Yeah, I think aren't there still places in Europe, like in France and stuff, where you can still find like unexploded like ordnance, like bombs and
Yeah,
mines and stuff. I think
we find shit from in Ukraine from like World War II still, but now we also find shit from this war.
Yeah.
So yeah. Also, like I said, they place it in like places like children toys sometimes. Literally saw footage of them stuffing a child's toy in the abandoned house with explosives. Stuff like that.
Damn.
Yep, not nice. Called a war crime, actually.
Yeah.
Not nice is not the best way to say it. Yeah, so things like that. Luckily, we did not explode because a mine was probably one of the worst ways to go out, because apparently sappers told me that it is unbelievably awful death, even worse than artillery and things like that, because it just like tears apart things and you will die very slow, most likely, so not very fast. Yeah, so kind of like, don't step on mines, kids, is the idea, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, other than that, things like that, just trips to places such as this. Yeah, but the graves are pretty horrible sight, but because there was like, it's very hard to me to say. Exhumacja, it's like exhumation or exhumation in English, or how the fuck it's called. When
Exclamation?
remove. Yeah, maybe that, yeah. Yeah, no, like remove bodies.
Excavation.
Oh, excavation. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, that. So they've been doing that for a while, and there were like a bunch of journalists filming, and they even found like explosive inside those graves. So they kind of knew that people would dig them up and explode in the process. So yeah, but but a bunch of people were that were excavated. Sorry, hard word. That they were like pretty much tortured. There was like no genitalia or like hands tied behind their back, and signs of things like that. Yeah, we actually talked with the lady who was a friend in Izium of a local artist. He was making figures from wood, so like animal figures from wood, stuff like that. And they would use his work to decorate like children's schools, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually caught him, Russians, when they occupied Izium, and they cut off his hands and feet.
Jeez.
So he died. They couldn't save him. He bled out. And so we actually managed to find people who knew the guy, which is not that hard because Izium is a pretty small town, so most people know each other,
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. So we would go with our guide, who is like a local from Izium, and she would say, "Oh, my friend lived there," and she shows like the house completely ruined, and she explains that, for example, her childhood friend, who was her classmate, died in a building that was exploded, but her husband didn't because he was in the kitchen and he survived. So shit like that, basically. Not very fun, let's say. I also called today, talked with my friend from Kherson. You guys probably don't know, but there was like a attack on Kherson by Russians, and 20 something people killed in stores, grocery stores, supermarket, and houses, and shit like that. And I tried to reach to him because my friend lived there. He lived through occupation, but and he wouldn't pick up for like at all or answer the messages. And I was like kind of worried because several places in the city were attacked. Um, train station, supermarket, houses, parks, things like that. So he ended up being alive. Hooray. So yeah, all good. Connected with him. But yeah, I'm getting a bit tired, to be quite honest, of calling people and asking are they dead or not. Kind of becomes a bit tiring at this point.
Yeah. Are you back into like normal work at all yet, or are you still like doing all the like running around and I guess delivering stuff to people?
That's the work basically.
That is it.
It
Gotcha.
takes like most of my time. Yeah, most of it is volunteer shit, obviously, but which is not paid. But I also do some fixer work sometimes as well, which is like basically showing journalists stuff around.
Gotcha.
Babysitting them,
Yeah.
kind of being like their mom. So I order them food. I like check if they don't step on mines and things like that. Get them in hotels, things like that. Also, I do translation work for money as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but mostly it's just that's the work, I'd say. Volunteer work is mostly, I don't see it like as work that much. Yeah,
Gotcha.
but
Well,
that's about it, I think. So yeah, nice chatting with you and catching up a bit.
Yeah.
Some philosophy talk
yeah.
happened.
Well, hey.
Yep. Check out Erich Fromm, guys. Pretty interesting. I read a bunch of his books and I actually owned some of them. They're pretty interesting. They're kind of smart, but also very easy to read. So not like boring philosophy shit that is incredibly impossible to read, or
Yeah.
German philosophers sometimes tend to do. Yeah, things like that. Oh, also, you probably know, but I got myself in a bit of a hot water with certain communists.
Oh,
They
over
like
the
swarmed
Nazi
my
stuff.
shit.
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah. It was very kind of. I actually accidentally like nuked from my Twitter like a bunch of reasonable people. I unbanned them, I think, unblocked them because I was just blocking like 1,000 people, something people, like with anime profile pics in Stalin pictures, So so and hammer and sickle and glorious proletariat, anti-fascist, anti whatever the fuck people, So so I was like blocking, like my finger was falling off, and I accidentally blocked. Actually, I think you're friendly with her, like a friends with her, Taft. Taj? Something like that.
She's questionable sometimes, but yeah.
I accidentally blocked her because she was like basically saying like something like not like exactly, but she said like basically I find it weird that people she quoted my tweet, and she basically said that I don't understand like why we should like do this apologia for like fascists and things like that. Why can't we say like fascists served like in Ukraine and it's all good, we don't have to like which is the point. I understand, but I think she was like severely lacking context because why Ukrainians are touchy about it, because it's like literally no joke, almost 100 years of campaign against Ukrainians, So yeah, calling us Nazis and shit like that. So yeah, some people are very touchy about that, including me, unfortunately. I think like a good faith discourse about like fucking patches, and Nazi shit and far right shit in Ukraine is destroyed. It's literally destroyed by like years of Russian propaganda, years of like propagandists in West who repeat that shit, and also people with hammers and sickles, obviously. So it's very hard to even talk with someone who is not from Ukraine about that, because people just start doing this Bandera shit and Ukrainian banderites and Nazis shit, and it's just considering that they invaded us literally using an excuse of denazification. It's kind of touchy subject.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
understand. Yeah, probably not willing to hear, or it's hard to even know who's like approaching the conversation in good faith. Yeah.
Unfortunately, almost nobody does.
Yeah.
That's my experience so far. So there would be some sort of like, basically the implication of that tweet I quoted it, and I'm not going to be gaslighted into thinking it's not, because it was. The implication was, I see so many of those like patches, I feel uncomfortable. Uncomfortable with what? Uncomfortable with supporting Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
So I brought up like several points on that, which is basically like stop being so obsessed with like symbols and aesthetics, for fuck's sake. Like, and first of all, and second of all, just where are like those Nazi fucking crimes in Ukraine? Like, where are the people in the government? Where are anti-Jew pogroms? What the fuck? What? Nothing is like that is happening. So why should I be worried? Why should I highlight it? Why should I, as they say, condemn performatively all of that if it's not of no use, and we have like bigger problems? And by highlighting that and talking about it, what you are doing actually is you assist in Russian propaganda, is what you're doing. So yeah, and undermining aid to Ukraine, which is crucial for our fucking survival at this point. So yeah, so to me it was pretty silly, but apparently people kind of found me. The so-called socialists, bad empanada type of people.
Yeah,
And
that bad empanada guy is
yeah,
like one of the worst people on the internet. He's actually like he'll like dox and
I
harass,
figured.
and like he's insane, like not like a funny bad person, like an actual terrible human being.
Yeah.
So be careful ever.
I actually didn't really realize that he quoted me, like, and sent a bunch of his freaks to harass me. I just thought they were like engaging in like silly me, in good faith. So I started to answer them, to, talk with them and try to, and they would just spam like a Nazi defender, like Nazi, all Ukrainians are Nazis, you should like all die, Russia should denazify you so fucking hard, Slavic people are degenerate.
Yeah.
Shit like that. Anti-Jew thing. I was just this was a surprise. I was called like a Zionist several times, and so I was like, what the fuck? Like, that's new,
Yeah.
Zionist was not something I have been told I am before. And apparently, saying you are anti-Israel apartheid state oppression of Palestinian people is actually a code for I hate Jews. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So
The Jewish discourse is also a very complicated one online too, depending on which.
yeah, I was like, what the fuck? They would like send me pictures of like Zelensky, pictures with a huge nose, like long nose, like shaking his hands, and and like this Nazi shit, like he's like wandering Jew, like getting rich, and they would be the most like obscene shit, like actual like Nazi shit, and they would say like things like, you should be grateful for like Russians, they made you, and you're like nothing, your Ukrainians are not even people, you should be you're like ungrateful, you should be grateful to USSR and Russians for something, I'm not sure what, genocide probably, but whatever the fuck. And it was so strange that these people would come at me, call me like a Nazi, and be like the most anti-Semitic, most anti like Slavic people I ever actually encountered.
Yeah,
It was very interesting.
Twitter is a wonderful place for discourse. So yeah.
Yeah, they do love their genocides apparently, as long as it's done by Russia or China or someone.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all good, I guess. I just have a little bit different values, I guess. So I like, democracy. I like freedom of speech. I like human rights. I have rights to self-determination, things like that, And they like love gulags. It's all good, Just a little disagreement.
Yeah, it just depends on who goes in the gulags, right? That's all that matters.
Yeah, but problem with gulags is that nobody really knows who goes there,
Yeah.
It might be you, it might be me. They might find a reason to send you there, even if you are like the most communist, the most proletariat-based, proletariat-pilled person, revolution-pilled person, but it can end up in that fucking gulag either way, you know? That's the problem with gulags.
Yeah.
So, yeah, pretty cringe, to be quite honest. Especially considering that most of them are fucking Westerners that never lived in communist anything. And yeah, it's very, very interesting. Also, they have like Hammer and Sickle and Stalin on their pics, and they will say, "You're like Banderite whore," or something shit like that. How come at the person who has like Azov symbol in their name, and while they have a fucking Stalin and Hammer and Sickle in their profile, it is pretty ironic, I must say.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, the dictator stuff is okay as long as it's their guy, you know? It's typically how people view it.
Yeah, that's what basically returns us to that conversation about like simping for authoritarianism. So they actually like it. They actually want to be the ones who execute people and who have power over them and who follow the orders of Daddy Stalin because he was doing the right thing. I actually saw someone send me the tweet of that Bet Empanada dude, and he was like, "If Putin came to denazify me, I will like roll over,"
Yeah.
It was such a cringe. It was like reading a sex fantasy or something.
Maybe.
He was like, denazify me so hard, Daddy.
Yeah,
It was kind of. I try to not to kink shame people generally, so I think it's all good if that's his thing, Yeah. People used to have Stalin portraits on the walls. Now they have Putin's portraits on the walls. It's all good,
Yeah, a lot of these guys online probably still have the Stalin portraits, so.
Yeah. Different time, different people, different daddy dictators, It's all good. Yeah. Why they, say they're anti-fascist in their bios, which I kind of question now. What is their anti-fascist work exactly? Harassing people on the internet. Yeah. And upvoting their own tweets. So they look like they were like doing so pathetic shit. They were like, we ratioed her, and they were so happy about it. And I was like, dude, have you like touched grass in your life? Well, it's pretty interesting. Yeah. But their anti-fascist work is apparently like just putting Hammer and Sickle in their bio and harassing people online. That's about it.
Yeah, Twitter is the extent of most of these people's like experiences with politics. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think that guy, they actually the discourse was about the guy with like Death in June like patch and the skull patch. They probably done whatever his like political views are. We don't know. He done more anti-fascist work than those people will do in their entire life. Because he actually killed some fascists, namely Russians.
Yeah.
So yeah. Fighting against a fascist state trying to genocide you is more of an anti-fascist work, I would say, than those people on the Twitter. So I'm good,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, anyhow. Yeah. Thanks for the chat. And bye-bye, everyone. Gotta go, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, be careful. Stay safe. We'll talk to you again in the future.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. I feel like a lot of times there's just not much I can respond to. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Jeez. Okay, hold on, I'll be back, and then we're probably I'll finish out this level, and then we're gonna do the fucking, we're gonna finish our self-defense thing, and then we're gonna fight Pisco, okay? That's the dream. Hold on one second.